Judge Antonin Scalia was elected to the Supreme Court in 1986, and it was a unanimous vote, 98-0. 98-0. It's incredible. Before he died, he said that he was a conservative judge. He said that in the old days, in the 70s and 80s, all the politicians, they used to get into rooms, they would clink glasses, and they would have parties together, and they would disagree, but they would still be able to come together. And he says, before he died, he said that doesn't happen anymore. I think he died in 2016. And he said that doesn't happen anymore. As a matter of fact, he and Ruth Bader Ginsburg she was a liberal judge, and they had a famous, friendly relationship. They'd go to shows together. They both loved opera. His son, after he died, talked about the friendship that he had with this judge that disagreed vehemently on so many issues. And it's just been interesting to see the way the world has gone. A Pew Research study recently showed that the Democrats are far more left-leaning and Republicans are far more right-leaning than they were in the last 2 decades. And what happens when that happens is as the power brokers start to get further and further apart, what happens is tears start to come in. So, I'm so thankful that we're in this series right now while the nations rage, because regardless of what happens in the election here, I'm not a prophet, but if we continue to see the way things go, regardless of what happens in the election, unless the Lord intervenes in some miraculous way, we're going to be praying about that next week, we're just going to see more and more tears, more and more divisions. And the craziest part about it is a majority of the people are not like that. It's like the loudest voices are pulling and pulling, and the more extreme people are getting more and more extreme. And the Church of Jesus Christ sits under the authority of God while it all happens. We're not just seeing an increase in the nations raging, we're seeing an increase in people's raging. And so this message here today is about setting our hearts before the election. It's about coming under the full authority of Jesus Christ as King and Lord. When your life is centered on something, it means that you have an anchor. You are grounded. You are not moving. We've been in this series called Unshaken because we feel like we're shaken and we're torn about this way and that way. And so if somebody would ask you, are you a centered person? They may say, yeah, the person's very grounded. But then the question would be, well, what are you centered on? Are you centered on your job? Are you centered on your family? Are you centered just emotionally, spiritually? Will they even go as far to say that you are Christ-centered? Because Christ-centeredness, this anchor, when the world is raging, we submit and we don't fall into the traps that are being laid for us. The more time passes, the more rages increases, wars, civil wars, upheavals. All of these things were predicted. Jesus said that this would happen, and so we should not be surprised. But today, we're going to look at Colossians chapter 3, verses 1-4. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for today or anything like that. It's not that kind of an election message. This is more of a message of how to stay focused while the nations rage. And if you're starting to feel a little rage in yourself, maybe there's a word in here for you too. Paul uses this title for Jesus in this passage, Christ. It means Holy One, the Anointed One, actually, the Anointed One, the Messiah. This is who Jesus is. Jesus Christ has been anointed for a purpose. He was called and separated and set apart for a purpose to redeem the world. He's the one who brought salvation to the world. He's the one that we can lean on. He's the one we can trust. And today, 2,000 years after Jesus was here, 2,000 years after Jesus was dead, buried, and resurrected, very close to that amount of time, we still have an anchor for our soul, and we can be Christ-centered. The title of the message today is A Call to Christ Above the Rage. A call to Christ above the rage. This is Colossians chapter 3, verses 1-4. It would be so helpful if you had a copy of God's Word and your eyes are on there so you can turn to the Bible app. You can read this as well. I just want you to get some encouragement and some hope in a very turbulent time, I would say, in our country. Colossians chapter 3, verse 1 says, if then, ask the question, is this me? All right. If then you have been raised with Christ, Seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth. A call to Christ above the rage. First here is seek the things above with Christ. Seek the things above with Christ. If you have been raised with Christ, the Christ-centered life, first of all, is a raised life. You were dead in your sin, in your transgression, and when you confess Jesus as Lord, now you have been raised. You have been resurrected in your life, and one day we look forward to resurrection of our body as well after we die. If then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above. If you want to know how to live, if you want to know what to do, you seek the things that are above, where Christ is. If you look above, you're going to be looking to a place where you can get your direction. If you look to Christ, you will see the trajectory of how to go. You're not just going wherever the wind blows, but you are moving in a direction following Jesus. But where do we look? Seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. When somebody is seated, that means that the work is finished. The work was finished on the cross, and Jesus, he is seated at the right hand of God. He did the work. He died, an atonement, sacrifice for our sins, and now he is seated at the right hand of God. But the other part of being at the right hand means that he is ruling with God. He is there. He is the rightful heir, seated at the right hand of God. This phrase, it appears first in Psalm 110, verse 1. Psalm 110 verse 1 says, "The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool." This idea here of sitting at my right hand, David, the king, any king that would have been anointed to lead Israel, they would have had a throne to sit in. And in Judaism, they applied this to the individuals that were coming up to reign as kings, to the human leaders, but also they applied it to the future Messiah, who is Jesus, who Kelly was so burdened about that she is going to go over to make sure that as many people hear that the Messiah has come as possible. So this is what they were looking forward to, that a Messiah would come and rule. Seated at the right hand, the privilege is given to somebody at the right hand, and Jesus Christ is that person. The only anchor for our souls while the world rages is the fact that Jesus is seated on a throne. He is seated on a throne, and it's so cool how it is, just he is seated, but it also says this, that he's not just seated like this, he's seated, and then the idea is that he's got a footstool. And the footstool are the enemies. All the nations are raging, the ones that were rising up against the Lord. We talked about that in Psalm number 2. It's actually nice to preach like this. Maybe this will be a way to, I should just have a chair up here every once in a while and just talk from a chair. But in Psalm 2, it says that the nations are raging. They are raging not against the other nation, not just against Israel. They're raging against Jesus. That's the idea here. And the Lord in heaven, it says, he laughs, and all of the enemies of God will be made a footstool. He is just relaxed. We have a king who is not stressed. We have presidential candidates who are stressed, and we're feeling the stress and the anxiety, and it's making some people rage. And so we are so thankful that there is a king who sits on a throne. The Christ-centered life starts with seeking things above, Jesus first. The focus here, seek, it's not just one time, it's continuous action. I am seeking the Lord. I'm always seeking the Lord. I am going after it. I want to keep on. You have been raised with Christ, and so keep on seeking Jesus. You want to know what to do? Don't look for the politicians. Look for Jesus. Like, what does the Word of God say that I'm supposed to do? How am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to vote? All of these are important matters, and we seek a king who wants to instruct us. Jesus Christ is always ready for you to seek him, always ready for you to come after him. But we get distracted. We get distracted by a lot of things, and so we need to continue to seek the Lord. Then it says this, set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. Seek and set are different. Seek is this continuing action that we're doing. We're continuing to go and look. But both of these mean a focus on Jesus, but it goes deeper. When you set your mind on heaven, this is what John Lightfoot, in one of the commentaries I read, he says this, you must not only seek heaven, you must also think heaven. So you're looking for Jesus. Where's my leadership coming? But then now I set my mind. I'm looking, where's the leadership? Okay, I got him. Now I'm going to think about what Jesus would have. I'm going to set my mind now on things that are above, not on the earthly things. It gives us a whole new orientation. The world is raging. My heart is anxious. I don't know what's going to happen. Do I go and stock up with canned foods because of the election? We're freaking out. And as we're freaking out, we seek the Lord. Lord, you are resurrected. You are high and lifted up. You are seated on a throne. We seek him. And then when we seek him and we find him, now we set our mind on things above. Oh, heaven, one day, we're going to talk about it. One day I'm going to get to that place. And this is just temporary. And yet I've maybe even made it an idol. Maybe some of you would say that America is an idol. We need to be careful that we only have one God. He is a jealous God. When you set your mind on things above, it's most of your thought life. You get a new orientation. Paul continues to hammer this point over and over again. It's connection with Christ. It's not emptying your mind. It's not focusing what's already in your mind. It's not filling your mind with what your friends say or your experts say or what the politicians say. The only connection with Christ comes from Christ. So we seek him and then we set on him. It's the only way. Otherwise, you're going to rage. You're going to be tossed about. You're going to be hurting. You're going to be wondering. And when you set your minds on Christ, then you start to submit to his will. You start to know what it is that he would have us do. Now, not all earthly things are evil. There's a lot of great things that I have, that I do, that aren't evil. But there are some things that really take us off of the path of the Lord. What things get your stomach starting to turn with anxiety? What things start to make you feel like I have to have that so much that I'm starting to worry about other things? Here's just a few things that I thought about. Set your minds above, not on. Set your minds above, not on. First, my stuff. My stuff. What things are bogging you down here on earth? What things are making you feel like if I didn't have it, if I lost this, then my life wouldn't be good anymore, or it would be too hard? Does anybody have like a really nice car? You know, some of you guys ride motorcycles. If we got friends who I ride with, and they're cool with, like, yeah, go ahead and ride my bike. It's fine. I hold it all loosely. Yeah, you want to borrow it for a week? I'm on vacation. Like, I'm away. Yeah, go ahead. Here's a code, my garage. Go ahead and take the bike. Right? We don't care because we hold it all loosely. My stuff. It's not that important. But if you hold on to these things, then maybe your mind isn't set on the right things. Sometimes my pain, set your minds above, not on my pain. In the middle of a trial, in the middle of a fire, we set our things on things above. The pain is there. This week we had this men's retreat, and Pastor John changed his message on Friday night, and then I changed my message on Saturday night, and we were so thankful. The Lord met us there. It was really awesome, and I talked about being forged, about being purified in fire. Pastor John talked about pots that are cracked pots, and how the Lord is the one who seals us and makes us whole. And so we had this unified theme that the Lord had given us. But we don't like pain. We don't like to experience pain. I love the kids in our church, all the young people, just love you all so much. And there's a kid many years ago who came up to me, and he wanted to shake my hand. And so I'm right here after the service, and he comes up. He's like, "How you doing? Good to see you." And he shook my hand. And as he shook my hand, he had one of those little shocker things. And so it shocked me. It was like, I didn't like that. I pulled back because I was like, oh, that wasn't cool, And then the next week, again, I'm like forgetful about stuff. And so again, he wants to greet me, and he comes up, and he's just like, "How you doing, Pastor?" And I was like, yeah, I got shot. Oh, he got me again, right? Third week, he comes up, and he's just like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, good. Good to see you, right? We don't want the pain. You start to get accustomed to it. And so when we start to feel the pain of life, it is a difficult thing that we go through. And all of us feel these things. The men who were at this conference, we talked about this. You are going to be forged. Forging is a difficult process. You heat the metal. You hammer the metal. You shape the metal, and then you quench it. It's heated up. It is hot. It is hard. And at the end of our time, and we had 80 men there, and there's, probably, 600 men that come to our church, maybe 800 men come to our church, and we want you to come. Out of the 80 men, 65 of them probably were on the ground on their faces, weeping and asking God to help them through the fiery trial. And these men are coming back changed. But we don't like the pain. And so, don't focus on the pain. When the pain is happening, you set your mind on things above. My stuff, my pain, my pleasure. So often we just get our minds on our pleasure, wanting to entertain ourselves. My future, you worry about your job. Some of you younger people, where will I get a job? Where am I going to work? What's going to happen? My future, your health, these kinds of things. What's going to happen down the road? There's a lot of fear that we have, and so we always put our direction on Jesus, setting our minds above. When you set your mind on things above, your earthly life will change. You act differently, you speak differently, you think differently, you will be changed. Verse 3 continues. It says this, "For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God." A call to Christ above the rage. Seek Jesus first. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. Continuing on, then embrace your identity in Christ. Embrace your identity in Christ. As the nations are raging all around you, I want you to embrace your identity in Jesus Christ. "For you have died," he says, "and your life is hidden with Christ in God." For you have died. He's speaking to people who are alive, and yet he's saying, for you have died. This past action, this completed action, he's zooming out a little bit saying, you have died. When you confess Jesus as Lord, you died. You died to yourself. You died to the old things. There's a new life that you have. He's slowing down. He's going over it. Notice that our life is, you have died. Your life is, first, it's hidden. Your life is hidden. That means it's safe. It's hidden where no thief can come in. Nobody can take it from you. It's concealed from the world, and Jesus is such a good hider. God Almighty is a great concealer, and so your life is hidden. Where is it hidden? It's hidden with Christ. It's not alone. It's with Jesus. You're hidden, and it's with Christ. It's mutual. For some incredible reason that should always blow your mind, Jesus wants to be with us. There's a mutuality to it. It's with somebody. The two of you are sitting with each other. The three of you, family, you sit here every week, and you're with your family because you're close to one another. I want you to think about that. Jesus, our life is hidden, but it's with Christ. It's with Christ. It's no longer just my life, but it's Christ's life within me. And then this, hidden with Christ in God. In God, it's settled. This is forever. I love how the Holy Spirit is so consistent. In Luke and in Mark, Paul's writings, again here in this, we see the same idea here that no one can pluck you out of my hand, Jesus says, and no one can take them out of my Father's hand. There is a security that you have because our life is hidden with Christ in God. God hides us, and so we are safe. It's mutual. It's settled. We are sure. And as the nations rage, we have this great hope that we have an identity now that is hidden in Christ. We are different people. When Susan and I were first married, we rented an apartment down in the city, and we had a landlord. And so this didn't really happen, but there's just a way to think about it. When we were renting this place, our landlord had a key to get in, and if something was broken, the landlord would come in, and they would take care of things while we were at work, and then everything would be fixed. The radiator, a water leak, we didn't have to take care of any of those things. It was all covered under our rent. Now, the landlord has the key. It'd be like this. When you are renting, this is the old life. This is an idea of the old life before Christ. Just imagine now we're having dinner and sitting down to dinner, and the door opens, and the landlord comes in. He's got the key, and he's saying, "What's for dinner?" Like, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I have a key. I get to come in." And then we're having chicken. Like, "Well, I don't eat chicken. Do you have any fish?" And then, all right, let me go and see if I have it, right? Because you want to be good to this person. And then they sit down at your couch, your sofa, and now they turn on the TV. They're like, "Do you have HBO?" He goes, "No, we don't have HBO." It's like, "Can you get HBO? Because I really like HBO." This landlord is really something, right? Very, very demanding. And the idea then, when now we own our house, and so we give people permission to come in and out. When you are now hidden with Christ, when you have this new identity with Christ, there is no longer this landlord mentality with the enemy. It's finished. Now you are owned by somebody else. Your house is not penetrable anymore. And if you buzz that landlord in again, that's on you. That's the idea here. Once we are followers of Jesus now, we have a whole new identity. I'm no longer a renter. I'm no longer renting space to somebody to come in and out of my home. I now own it. Well, Jesus owns it, and he has hidden my life with him. I have a new identity. I'm a completely different person. I'm hidden. Your new identity in Christ, it means now that you are safe and secure. As the nations rage, as we are worried about what's going to happen, you have a new identity. You have an assurance of where you're going to go, which is where we're going to get to in just a moment. But if you were afraid for your life and you heard somebody was going to break in and you had somebody to hide with, you would want to hide with Jesus. That's the picture here. The nations are all raging. It's like it's scary out there. Maybe you're feeling it. You're feeling it in your heart about what you're seeing in the world. And as it's raging, you have a new identity. You're a new creation, and you are hidden, and you are safe and secure because Jesus is with you. And this leads us here to the third and final point here, the hope we have in the future, a call to Christ above the rage. I'm going to get to some application about the election in just a moment. It seeks Jesus first. It embraces our new identity. And finally, the Christ-centered life, you are called to anticipate your future glory with Christ. You're called to anticipate your future glory with Christ. Notice how he says it here, verse 4. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Talking to people who are being persecuted. You think it's bad. When there were emperors who could burn you at the stake. Our presidents can't do that. Just think what was happening in the days when they're writing, you're going to be okay because when Christ your life appears, you will also appear with him in glory. There is a future glory that comes, and you, not just temporal rewards, but you have eternal rewards as well. When you're sick, you have many options of what to do. At camp, something crazy happened. Pastor Jay is older than me. I'm 53, so he's, like 70-something years old. I'm not sure. But he's older than me. But Pastor Jay, he should not be playing football with the young guys at church. And I was on the sideline. I really wanted to go out, but like I said, I keep getting injured, and so I just stood on the sidelines. When you see the videos of it, maybe you'll see me on the sideline just like standing there. But Jay, after a while, he got into the game, and he wanted to play. So he's playing with all these young guys. I go back to my room. I'm sitting there. I'm working on my sermon, and then Marty comes in. One of our elders, he comes in, he's like, oh, Jay's incredible out there. He's like catching all these balls, like really incredible. I started to feel really jealous. I'm like, I could have caught it. I could have, And so I'm sitting there, and it's fine. I just go back. And then, not like 5 minutes later, I hear people mumbling about Jay, and then Jay limps into the room, pulled a calf muscle. And I was like, you okay? He goes, yeah, I got some Advil, and so he's taking Advil. He's all right. He's limping around out there with a cane because he doesn't have wisdom like me. And Jonathan, older gentleman here, David Song, also very wise. We just did not play football with the young guys. But Jay, he doesn't have that wisdom. And so he now has to go, and he has to get a prescription. And so he pulled from his shelf Advil. That's what he's going to take. So he's taking this muscle relaxer, right? Reduce the swelling. And so he's taking this. He takes these prescription drugs. When you go through the shelves at the grocery store, at the pharmacy, there's so many options for every illness you have. It's overwhelming. And then you're like, which is the generic version? That's overwhelming too. It used to just be one thing, and now I've got so many choices. When I was in college and I would have a little sore throat or a cough, I would take the nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, stuffing head fever so you could rest medicine. You guys know what that is? Yeah, we'd take that, NyQuil, and they served it. It's so bad. They had that at the little pharmacy that we had at our school. And I would take that because there were so many options for all these drugs when you have some symptoms. I read this somewhere. I don't know even who to give it credit to, but this is what I read. God does not give strength and encouragement like a pharmacist fills prescriptions. He promises himself as enough, not the pharmacy. He is the prescription. See, we are hidden with Jesus. We have a new identity. We're a new creation, and so we don't need to go and try to find stuff to help us. We have Jesus himself. He is the fix. The Bible says, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so many people are trying to find a way to the way. You don't need a way to the way. Jesus is the way. He is the answer. He is the prescription. He is what you need. And we have access to him at any time. He is our life. And Christ, as he appears, you also will appear. It's incredible. Christ, who is your life, when he appears, you also will appear. The same action, appearing. Jesus is going to appear. We're going to appear. Same location. With him in glory. Same word, same event. It's happening the same time. When it happens, I'm going to also experience this too. Incredible. One of the most, the best time that is to come is the reappearing of the Lord. When he comes again. And when he comes again, we also will be with him in glory. It's incredible. Same action, same location, same time. The Bible tells us to motivate our present view with future in mind. I'm telling you, that's the only way that I can make it through. I shared this. I was talking to Ed, Ed Zakari at the conference. We were having a little chat. Again, another wise man not playing football. You were there with me, watching on the sidelines. But we were talking, just having a talk. We're talking about all the suffering that's in the world. I said the only way I can make sense of any of this suffering is the fact that we caused it from our sin. Every issue we have, every cancer, every health issue, every depression, every marriage problem, everything goes back to Genesis 3:7. You hear me say this all the time. This is my theology. I cannot unlearn this. I cannot unknow this. So I have it in my heart. Because of our sin, we are now facing the consequences of it. Genesis 3:17, by the toil you will work the ground. We saw the consequences right away. There's a curse upon us. And so I make sense of everything that's going on in the world and in my life with the end in mind. We will suffer here. Sometimes there's healing, sometimes there's relief, but we're just heading towards a grave, and we are going to suffer. I said, maybe we'll suffer for 30 to 50 years, and then we have eternity. We have eternity with no walkers. Mom, you're going to run in heaven. I don't know if you ran when you were a kid or not, but you are going to run when you are in heaven because there's no walkers. The only person that has any scars in heaven is Jesus. That's it. We are going to be perfected. All the pain, it will be gone. Live your life now with the future in mind. You are going to make it through this election season. You could make it through like they made it through. If there's a civil war here ever again, you will make it through because you're going to endure, because there is a future glory in mind. This is the only hope I have. There's a future glory if you invest. And investing is biblical. Susan and I invest. You can't pay us forever, all right? It's like 90 years old, all right, you got to keep this job. It's like, you can't do that. So we need to invest so we're able to take care of ourselves one day. And as we invest, if you invest this way, in and out of the stock market over and over again, just like always worried, it's going to be tough. We invest in a very different way. We invest with the future in mind. So the stock market's going down. We're fine. I got another 40, 50 years unless the Lord returns. And it's okay. He's a king anyway. So I'm not worried. I'm not bothered. I'm not stressed about it. Man, it's like, oh my gosh, my 401k is down to whatever the amount is. It's down 30 or 40%. And then now you're like, my 401k is up 40%. If you live for the ups and downs of it, you're just going to always be worried. But the idea, even in the stock market investing, is that over time it is going. But I can't promise you that. But over time, the trajectory is this way. And so with the future in mind, you invest today, knowing or trusting or hoping that it will be good. The future glory motivates you to action now. A call to Christ above the rage. Can you see that your relationship with Jesus should be a settling thing? Even if the investments don't go well. Even if the election doesn't go your way, you have a king who you can embrace. You have a king who will give you peace. And as we enter in the next election, just 10 days away, I want to apply this call to Christ above the rage. Finally, let's consider this. Application during the election season. An application during the election season. I'm just going to go through each of these things. The first point was seek the things above with Christ. We've been instructed to submit to Jesus, continually to set our mind on heaven, think of heaven as the nation's rage. Maybe you've heard this phrase, you shouldn't mix religion and politics. Anybody ever heard that? And like, yeah, if you're in a new room, it's not a good thing to talk about religion and politics. Don't mix religion and politics. In our country, we have this, really, I would say, a doctrine of our country is the separation of church and state. Separation of church and state. This means that our country does not endorse or support or interfere with religious practices of its people. That's why at the Republican National Convention this year, the Republican Party is not a Christian party. At the Republican National Convention, they had a Sikh woman read a Sikh prayer. Why? Because we are okay with that in our country. Because in our politics, we don't endorse one religion. That's just the way it is. So this is our country. There's a separation of church and state. Our government does not endorse it. Our government is not Christian. Our church wouldn't support that practice. We would not have a Sikh woman come up here and just read a Sikh prayer. We wouldn't do that because we are under the authority of Jesus Christ. You shall have no other gods. And so we would say, no, you can't do that. But in God we trust. Our country is built on this idea of God. In God we trust. There is a supreme being, and you in this country have a freedom to worship that being, however, or not worship that being, however. But we want you to know the founders of our country believed that there was a God over it all. This is true. This is the way it is. But what about religion and politics? Religion and politics. If we're seeking things with Christ above, then how can we leave anything out of it? You cannot separate your religion and politics. You have to keep your religion and politics together. You have to. You have to be influenced by the Lord as we have opportunities to vote. You have to. You don't separate it. If you're seeking Christ above and you're doing that in your house while you're raising your kids, you're doing that in your neighborhoods, you're doing that in your jobs, you're seeking to honor the Lord, you should seek to honor the Lord in your political decisions too. We can separate church and state as a government, but we should not separate religion and politics in our own life. While I was on break, I just read a book by Jonathan Leeman. I forget the name of it. There's something about the nations raging, a really good book on politics and rage. And here's another book. It's from 9 Marks. Mark Devers, pastor of Capitol Hill Baptist Church in D.C. And out of there, they have this ministry called 9 Marks. We have one copy of this. It's a small little booklet. It says this: how can I love church members with different politics? All right, so we have one copy for every household. It's in the lobby. We ordered enough for one, and if you get out there and they're gone, let us know. We'll get some more for next week, okay? But this is a good book for you. I read it. It takes maybe 30 minutes to read this, a little pamphlet, give you some things to think about. But as we think about this idea of separation of church and state or religion and politics, one of the favorite verses that people want to go to is Matthew chapter 22, verse 21. In Matthew chapter 22, verse 21, they ask Jesus a question: is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? And so this was introduced to me, not in this book, but that other book by Jonathan Leeman. I want to give him credit. I really love this thought that he had here. Is it lawful to give taxes to Caesar? And Jesus says, give me a denarius, give me a coin. Whose image is on the coin? And so on the coin, there's an image of Caesar. So then he says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. See? There it is. Keep God's things, God things, and keep the politics. So it's like, this is what it is, right? So this is what a lot of people think. They're like, oh yeah, even Jesus, he says, keep these things separate. Don't bring these things together. But this is what D.A. Carson, theologian at Trinity, he's retired now, but this is what he suggests. So here's how we look at it a lot of times. Maybe you've thought of it this way. First slide here. God's things, Caesar's things. Politics and government, all that is Caesar's stuff. So we keep that with Caesar. But God's things, this is worship, faith, church. Jesus is only here talking about just God's things, just how to get to heaven. That's all that we're concerned about. This is how we kind of view things. We have this separation sometime in our life. But D.A. Carson, he says this: maybe you should look at it this way. Here's the next slide. When Jesus is saying these things, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's, isn't Caesar also God's? Aren't Caesar's things God's? Doesn't God own control? Doesn't he have authority over everything? If Caesar is made, whose image is on the coin? Caesar's. Whose image is on Caesar? God's. Could Jesus have been flipping it up a little bit? Could he have been helping people to see that, yes, go ahead and pay those taxes, but ultimately it doesn't matter because I'm the one who's in control. As a matter of fact, we see that Jesus is going to judge the whole nations. Jesus is going to judge the governments. You don't separate religion and politics. You are influenced by it. You are influenced by what you believe. My religion, Christianity, following Jesus, is my border. This is what I believe. This is my conviction. And because I have a conviction about what God's word says, I'm going to try to make sure that these things happen as best they can. But if it's out of my control, then it's out of my control. If I'm going to submit to this government, and sometimes the things aren't the way that I may want them to go. It's just incredible what happens when we just abandon everything to just say, well, let the government be the government, or let them rule how they want to rule, and we're just going to be over here and we're going to worship Jesus. Both of these things, it's all influenced, and we live in this country that allows for us to be involved in some way in the political process. So we vote. So we vote our convictions. We have a border, and every politician has a border too. They have a religion. They may not call it a religion. I don't know if, Donald Trump says he's a Christian. I don't know if he is or not. The Lord will know. Kamala Harris, I don't even know if she's ever said she is. I'm not sure where they stand. The Lord will judge, right? I've never met them. I'm not sure. But they have borders. They've got a desire here for something to happen. And as politicians make their rules, as they start to govern, as they share their positions, they are being influenced by their borders, by their religion, by the limits that they are willing to go. Abortion, gender issues, immigration, migrants. Many years ago, it's like, I don't think it was even a discussion anymore. Gay marriage, that was a big thing several years ago. It's like these days, you don't even hear about that anymore. Right? And so the things that we were raging about so many years ago, it's like now, oh my gosh, I'm not that upset about that anymore. I was so upset 5 years ago, 8 years, 10 years, I remember 12 years ago. Oh my gosh, it's like, this is the end of the world is coming. And then now it's like, all right, well, the government made a different decision, and we're still worshiping the Lord, and we voted in certain ways, and it may have happened or may not have happened, depending on where you are. And the nations rage, and some of us rage. Just think about the civil rights movement in our own country. For so many years, black Americans were treated as less than human. And then over time, the conscience started to grow and say, hey, this isn't right. And we're probably not where we should be or where we'll be one day, but we're a lot better than it was. And I feel like we have an opportunity here because this country is awesome and amazing. And people have a great opportunity to voice their opinion and to work on the consciences of people. And you have opportunities to do that with your vote. So of course you cannot separate your religion and your politics. You let the Lord influence you. This is why America's great. Then embrace your identity with Christ. Embrace your identity in Christ. You have a new identity. You're hidden with Christ. A new passion, a new call, a new order. The old life, it's gone. The old actions are gone. The New Testament church was under persecution, intense, and as the nations rage in this election season, you can just say, hey, I'm a child of God. I'm going to set my mind on things above. I'm hidden with Christ. I'm going to be okay, even when all this stuff happens or if it happens. Is your identity an American, or is your identity a follower of Christ? This is a question that I wrote here. Does anybody in our church have America as an idol? Because the America that you love, it may be different than what you wanted it to be. And so then now it's getting pulled from your grasp, you feel, and you lose sight of eternity, which leads us to the third thing. We anticipate the future, the glory. Don't let what happens one day out of, I did the math, don't let what happens one day out of 1,460 days affect how you live the other 1,459 days. You have an identity with Christ. You are a follower of Christ. You are called to love your enemies. So, in the political landscape, you're like, that person's an enemy of mine. Pray for them, love them. That's the Jesus way. And if you're not willing to do that, this is hard to hear, but if you're not willing to do that, you have an idol. You have a different king on the throne of your life. We embrace Jesus. So maybe you need to do some work here. Anticipate your future glory with Christ because of what is coming. We're going to appear with him in glory. Don't fear the future. We just trust the Lord. And the more the division comes, the more challenging it will be. Our country will be, I hate to say it, but this is what I believe, our country will be more divided in 2 weeks than it has ever been. I just feel like this is happening. Doesn't matter. Whichever party wins, we're heading in this direction. So how are we going to be? We can't control it all. I don't have that kind of platform. All I have is you to love. All our elders and pastors, we have you to love. So as you are living in a world that the nations are raging and you start to feel yourself raging, just ask the Lord to give you a peace because your life is hidden with Christ in God. You're going to be okay. And if not in the next 40 years you're not okay, you'll be okay for eternity. You'll be okay for eternity. I told Eddie in front of all those men, I said, Eddie, you're going to have hair in heaven. I wouldn't do that here to all of you. I just, Eddie was okay with it. He's not here, actually, I don't think so. Listen, this last thing I want to say here, and we're going to pray. We're going to spend a few minutes in prayer. Scholar Douglas Moo, again, when I was reading, he wrote this. He said, the past experience of dying with him and being raised with him is the basis for our present status as people, whose heavenly identity is real and secure, yet hidden, an identity that will be gloriously manifested in the future. We have a future to look forward to, of being with the Lord, and so we can trust him. We're going to pray. We're going to spend some time praying, and then we're going to receive communion. And as we pray, there's a couple prayer prompts that are come up on the screen here. We're just stretching ourselves a little bit here. And every week, hopefully, we'll hear you praying audibly. Don't just pray in your mind, but if you're with some people that you're comfortable with, you can get into little groups right there where you could pray. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can just sit quietly. If you want to join a group but you don't want to pray, you don't have to pray. But brief prayers, okay? Just short prayers. And let's lift up this first prompt. Jesus, you are on the throne of my life. I confess that I've allowed blank to take my attention off of you. Question, do you have any idols in your life? Ask God for forgiveness, recommit to his lordship. So here's an opportunity for you to pray and lift up your voices and pray together, okay? Go ahead and do that for just a few moments. We have one more prayer prompt here. Pray for our nation, for a godly outcome to the election. Just however you're led, you can pray right there in your groups. Just pray for this nation that we love, so many have sacrificed for. Just pray. Say this together. Lord, hear our prayer. Let's say that together. Lord, hear our prayer. One more time. Lord,